Claudio.
Welcome back, fellas, to another rendition of Claudio, the infrequent, soothing, buttery, spooky audiobook thing that I do on this channel every so often. No, I haven't forgot about it. So I've decided, whenever I decide to do a Claudio, we're going to do one story written by me, and the next time we'll do a story written by someone else, and then so on and so forth. So last time we read From Beyond by H.P. Lovecraft. This time I'm going to be reading one of my own stories, and this one is called E. E is all about a very big, spooky, unknown letter E appearing in the Grand Canyon and the reaction of the planet. I don't really know if it means anything. I mostly got the idea off the meme, and I like the idea of memes circulating in the minds of everybody, and it can be pretty fucking fried, and I think E is probably one of the most fried memes, and maybe this is a testament to that. I don't know. Anyway, without any further ado, please enjoy. E. Everyone remembers the day that the E came to Earth. It's been the biggest mystery to ever grace humanity. Surprisingly, it's a rather uneventful story. One day, what feels like a lifetime ago, the Grand Canyon was just immediately filled by E. A colossal, gargantuan letter E, quite literally out of nowhere. It simply spawned within a fraction of a second, and it hasn't done anything since. It's just there, existing like all the rest of us, mocking us in its sheer unpredictability. As is the case for most days, fanatics and doomsday preppers line up along the cavern line, screaming all sorts of cultist dialect of the aloof letter. Nobody really knows what they're talking about. We can easily assume. Maybe they beg of the E to go back to alphabet hell, or to give us the enlightenment that Latin never could. It never gets easier living on this planet, knowing such an unpredictable, such an improbable, such a mind-numbingly impossible object defying all nature and physics is here. With us. A letter of the goddamned alphabet tormenting us all. E sits deathly still and does nothing at all times. Scientists who appeared shortly after it first materialized within the cavern picked up no readings at all. No mass, no weight, no heat, no activity, nothing that would prove that it existed. Their findings, or lack thereof, irritated and maddened most of them. Many of them hung up their lab coats in shame and left their professions. For all we know, the E might actually have mass and weight and heat, but it is simply choosing not to tell us. Reports on the E have varied amongst individuals, as most people are unable to look upon it for long due to oncoming anguish and despair, but most agree that the E is an almighty colossus that no group of men could ever begin constructing. A glossy black shape of incalculable height and incalculable width, with a surface so reflective that the sun gleams and bounces off its edges and angles, blinding those around it like the retina-burning effects of a solar eclipse. The blackness of the E is often indescribable by most. It's a fetid, soul-crushing shade of black, like staring into an unending abyss, a godless hole filled with unknown and untold evils. It's a deeply discomforting sensation, almost as if the E is trying to communicate to us the foulest of intentions. Thoughts of rape, thoughts of murder, thoughts of dissection, thoughts of mutilation, thoughts of molestation. E launches its grubby hands into our minds and holds on tight, suffocating our brains. The list of attempts and methods that were made to destroy the blasted thing goes on for far too long to put into words or onto paper, but it includes some of the finest and most expensive armaments that can be mustered by the world's governments and facilities. Firing squads, tanks, carpet bombings, drills, EMPs, all resulting in absolutely nothing. Not even a scorch mark. I think in some ways that the governments hold a silent relief in these failings, as the one weapon in their mighty repertoires that is yet to be used against the impenetrable E is the nuclear bomb. They must believe the bomb might actually work, and if the E were to be destroyed, I don't think any of us really want to think about it. Why the thought of E finally falling apart and leaving our weary minds in peace terrifies me down to my core, I have no idea. I can't really describe the feeling, but I compare it to the thought of me and everyone else on this planet dying in the most brutal and hellish of ways. The fall of E is comparable to my head being slowly crushed between a serrated vice, comparable to dull, rusted nails being hammered into my temples with brute force, comparable to being naked, helplessly stretched out on a rack as ravenous beasts bite and tear at my flesh with jagged teeth. The unstoppable flood of torture and pain that consume my imagination whenever the concept of E ceasing to exist here with us seems to be a trend with most people, as many have reportedly taken their own lives or have simply been driven mad by them. I don't think on the demise of E often. At least I try not to. I try very, very hard. I guess some just can't stop thinking about it, and thus are constantly exposed to these thoughts of heinous brutalities. So, it seems that we have all been forced to accept that the E is part of our lives forever. From now until the day we die. Or maybe the E will kill us faster than old age or planetary destruction. We can't live with E. We can't live without E. What a horrific harmonic imbalance we've been forced to endure. And so, we do. We have done so for 10 years. 10 years of mind-numbing, bone-aching, skin-crawling, hair-graying years of unprecedented angst and worry. The whole world has had their metaphorical collars felt by the ever-present E. And on this, the 10th year of our unbearable coexistence, the unwelcome grip of the E's invisible but palpable hands tightened further on our minds. No one really knows how or why or even really when or where it started, but we all felt it within us. A moment of mind-bending clarity to some, a moment of gut-wrenching horror to others. Humanity experienced dreams. Bad dreams. Bad dreams the likes of which could not be conceived by the Sandman himself. The bad dreams were made all the more horrifying only when all reports indicated the exact same experience for all who experienced it. Not one individual could recall something different happening in their barely memorable dreams, only the same thing over and over and over, night after horrible night. I remember the bad dreams very well, and my thoughts on the fall of the incongruous E befall me like they never have before. The dream began the same for all, of course. It was more a kind of half-dream, like a fever. Rapid flashes of incoherent, horrid moments occurring all at once, while still aware of being in bed, attempting to gain rest. It started unassumingly, laying in bed. A sudden and alarming whooshing sensation overflows the body in the room, like a palpable wind grabbing at the immediate area to pull it into the depths of hell. Blackness all around. If one attempted to look down at themselves, they would see nothing, no bed or body to be found, nothing but black and that idling whoosh sensation beginning to leave the non-corporeal being. One may attempt to strain and peer into the impenetrable darkness. Some correlate the darkness with that other dark body that cannot be seen for too long, but I think this is hunting for needless symbolism, a desperate ploy to connect phenomenon to phenomenon. Then, the noise begins. It starts abruptly and builds faster and more violently than any audible sound in the waking world ever could. The noise ascends and continues to ascend to scales incomprehensible. It pierces the eardrums and rattles the bones. It screams from all corners of the dark and refuses to die down or stop. The noise is so incomprehensible and deafening that it can barely be described at first, nor can it be listened to closely enough to comprehend it due to its obscene, piercing quality and feel. When you finally gain the mental strength to focus solely on the piercing noise and most certainly sacrifice the gift of hearing, you can slowly piece foul notes and pitches together to decipher their source. The source is not artificial, as it most certainly should be. They are organic, from the lungs of man. The noise is that of a million voices, gathered together like Satan's own personal choir, a vicious cacophony of shrieking and shrilling combined on a heavy wave of audible knives. The unending torrent of screeching and whooping, yowling and howling that would not falter or ease, sounding so warped and distorted so that it should be impossible for such things to emit from human vocal cords, continue to audibly assault the undeserving sleeper until they awake, sweating and screaming. Screaming not because of the abrasive whooshing that overcomes the body. Screaming not because of the thick, grossly familiar blackness. Screaming not because of the non-corporeal existence within that blackness. Screaming not because of the sound. Rather, screaming because of what the sound is. For once the sleeper learns of the sound's human origin, the sleeper also learns what the endless hymn of evil and hate is truly saying, what all the voices are saying, what all the voices are saying in unison. The voices are repeating one thing endlessly together. E.